Oh, guys, good, you hear? I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. The Gromer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Gromer Next Door. The Gromer Next Door podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm everybody's friend.
Hello, Pups and Kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled and massively informative episode of the Gromer Next Door. I'm your host, Chris Green, and rejoining us this week is our good friend, Dr. Laurie Coger. It is an absolute honor and a massive privilege to be able to have another great conversation with her. She is, in my opinion, one of the smartest veterinarians in the world, if not the smartest. And I cannot tell you how much fun it is for me to have these conversations with her. What's great is that she will be returning periodically through 2018 and continuing these conversations, which is funny because we decide, oh, well, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that, and we still leave things for another week. And I just think that that's amazing. Well, let's go into our fact of the week. Plato once said that a dog has the soul of a philosopher. Is that ever true or what? Well, by that sound, Dr. Coger is about to enter the podcast studio. So, with that said, welcome back, Dr. Laurie Coger.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right, this week on the podcast, we are rejoined by somebody that I'm absolutely just fond to talk to. I have absolutely the most fun talking to this lady, and I'm so glad because you're going to come back on and on and on and on and on and probably just become one of those reoccurring guests that'll be on every other episode or maybe even every week. Who knows? Dr. Laurie Coger comes back to the podcast, and I'm so freaking glad to be able to talk to you. Thank you for being back.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. This is so much fun.
I
love doing these.
I can't tell you how much fun I have talking to you. I mean, to give people an understanding of what it's like here, we've been talking, I don't even know, I don't have my clock up, but we've been talking for a while before we even started recording because there's so much to go over, and you're so freaking smart and so much fun to talk to.
Well, and there's so much going on in the pet world right now.
Oh boy, right?
It's incredible.
It is.
It's like every day something new comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you want to start?
Well, you know what? I told you before, I'm like, and again, something that also is really funny is that if we're not talking on the phone, we're talking by message, which is also very entertaining. And you're like, you know what? Last night I'm at basketball, and I'm looking at my phone, and you're like, hey, we should start with vaccines. I'm like, yes, let's go with that. And I told you, I want you to pretty much drive the ship. This is where you get to actually lead the way. I'm just going to kind of bounce. I'm just going to kind of bounce around, and I'll chime in whenever there's time.
Sounds good. Vaccines. You can't find a hotter topic right now than how to vaccinate your dog or cat. A lot of new information coming out about how incredibly effective our vaccines are. And yet we still have veterinarians and pet owners vaccinating their dog or their cat every single year, which is totally unnecessary. Mm-hmm. We also have people vaccinating for diseases that their dog or cat is highly unlikely to ever encounter. And that does a couple things. Number one, it wastes the owner's money, which, hey, I don't have spare money to throw away for nothing.
Right.
I don't expect anyone else does. And it puts a lot of things in the pet's body that aren't necessarily beneficial if he's never going to need that immunity at all. I think a lot of owners don't even know what's in a vaccine. Do you?
You know what? I really don't. I don't know all of it. So that's why I
Sure.
trust you guys. You guys have this really pretty DVM at the end, and I don't really want to say you're wrong. And I think that's what a lot of us pet
Well,
parents are.
I think, and you know what? I don't like to tell veterinarians that they're wrong. I just say, I choose to do it another way, and here's the science that I follow.
Right.
Because, as I think we've talked about before, no veterinarian gets into the business to do anything but what they believe is the best for that dog or cat or snake or bird or lizard that's in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody keeps pace on every single facet of veterinary medicine, and there's no way you could. But vaccines are a hot topic for me personally because I've had problems in my dogs when I inappropriately administered vaccines based on my knowledge now. So in a vaccine, you have what's called the antigen, which is the piece of the virus or disease-causing organism that's been modified or killed so it can't cause the disease. And that's what the immune system actually builds antibodies from. But there's also a bunch of other stuff in there because we've got to put it in 1 ml of fluid. We've got to have that fluid stay sterile, so there are antibiotics in there. There are preservatives. There's usually mercury or aluminum at much more than the dose that we're told is safe for us to ingest in fish. And some other things called adjuvants, which basically provoke the immune system and get a better response. So if there's no benefit to the vaccine in terms of immunity, and we're putting all those things in potentially every year, we can cause harm. And we can cause adverse reactions that range from a little bit of swelling at the injection site all the way to death. So it becomes a very serious topic for many of us.
It's always so weird to think how much chemicals a typical pet parent is actually ingesting, whether it's orally or by an actual needle, into a dog or even a cat.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
Or
God.
cat. Well, and thinking about the dog specifically, you know, this morning, so I did office calls this morning, and bless my boss, he did my one surgery for me because I was running behind, so I actually ran on time. But I saw a 6-pound French Bulldog puppy, cutest thing on 4 feet. And that French Bulldog puppy would get, theoretically, the same dose of vaccine that the 120-pound, 10-month-old Malamute with hip dysplasia would get.
Right.
Now, does that make sense to you?
Not at all. And you know,
Not to me either.
That's where it all comes down to. Do we not know math? I mean, there's an obvious. Here's a little bulldog. What, 8 pounds at most?
8 pounds. Yep.
And 170. I'm sorry, but I think 8 and 170. They don't. There's the only thing that's actually synonymous is that they're both numbers, but a lot off.
Yeah.
Only 162 pounds.
And I think, you know, the vaccine manufacturer has, most of them test their vaccines on dogs in the 30 to 40 pound range, and they prove that it effectively prevents the dog from getting the disease. They don't tend to test the vaccines on those extremes of the very small or the very large. And so they say, you'll hear it bantered around in the vet literature, we're not vaccinating a dog, we're vaccinating an immune system, and it's all the same dose. And that may be true when you're speaking of the antigen, the little piece of the disease-causing organism that you're showing the dog to help it make antibodies. But it's not true of the mercury, the preservatives, the antibiotic that you're sticking in there. That's probably 90% of the volume of that vaccine. And that's what I think, from my common sense science viewpoint, needs to be adjusted for the animal's body size. But we don't do it. And in fact, have you talked to Dr. John Robb from Connecticut?
No.
The veterinarian who was size dosing his rabies vaccine and got in major trouble and lost his practice, almost lost his license, really bad. But he actually had a formula that totally went by weight. And The dogs were immune. He titered them. He measured their antibodies levels, I should say.
Now,
And we'll see where his movement goes to try to raise awareness around this issue and get some progress made.
as just a pet parent, take away the
Sure.
knowledge that comes with doing this. I honestly, and maybe you can consider this, chalk it up to being just ignorant. I just always figured that everything was measured by weight. Because honestly, that's what
Nope.
makes sense to me.
Well, and certainly that is the case. Antibiotics, pain medications, anesthetics,
Yeah.
everything's dosed per pound of body weight, but vaccines are different. And, they always use the argument of vaccinating an immune system, not a dog. But we know from various studies that are out there that dogs under, I want to say it's 20 pounds, have a 28% higher adverse reaction rate to vaccines than larger dogs.
Well,
28%.
but
That's
see,
huge.
I could see where that would work. But see, now again, here we go with the logic
Common
and
sense.
the science. You're right. It's
Yeah.
like, well, of course, there's less in that dog. There is, you're pumping it with tons of chemicals. Of course, it's like an overdose in a sense, and yet, I mean, it is an overdose. I mean, it's not like it is an overdose, and we're not doing it by pound. I mean, oh my gosh, that's a smack my head kind of moment.
Yeah. It when you think about it that way, it's stunning. And many veterinarians will give multiple vaccines at once. So every time you hit those smaller dogs with another vaccine, their adverse reaction rate goes up further.
Wow.
Which is why I'm firm. Do not give your dog more than one vaccination at a time, and give them at a 4-week interval so the body has time to make the antibodies in response to the vaccine and let that reaction subside before you give the immune system another task. I'll see records on animals that have received distemper, parvo, bordetella, and Lyme all at the same visit, and the dog might be 10 pounds. I wonder why it's still alive.
Yeah. I mean, we tell people.
I've certainly I've seen bad things happen.
We tell pet parents all the time, don't take your dog, especially a new dog. I'm not talking about an 8-year-old or a 4-year-old. I'm just talking about a puppy. Don't take a puppy to a vet and then take them to the groomer, because they will put the two together and think, oh gosh, I'm going to be, given a shot here or something's going to happen. It has to be separated kind of situations. And they go and they look at us like, really? It's like, yeah, think about it. Would you want to go to a daycare after a doctor, but they look identical? Right. Oh, yeah.
You don't know, makes perfect sense.
It's a 3-year-old child.
Yeah. The other thing that will sometimes happen when a veterinarian hears that you're going to a daycare or a grooming facility, oh my gosh, now you must have kennel cough, now you must have influenza. And all of a sudden, we're giving a whole truckload of vaccines at once.
Right.
And then we're going to go stress the dog by their first visit to the groomer.
Yes.
I think we need to be a little more protective and proactive, especially with our small dogs, especially with puppies.
Yes.
And really for their mental as well as their physical health.
Well, most people have small dogs. I mean, when you really look at it, you've got so many small breeds that are out there, and they're the cute little dogs that, of course, they're trendy, and they're under 20 pounds. So, and I do hear it all the time where it's like, oh, we got to get all of these shots, and big box stores they make it required. If you go, they have to have them all. Oh, we have a Purina-based medical facility right here that you can actually go to. I'm going to trust that. I am not going to trust that at all. So it's crazy. And yes, kennel cough you can get it. Of course, it's the common cold. And again, here's the funny part. When you tell people kennel cough is the equivalent of the common cold for a dog. Really? That's it? That's it. It's
I think everyone gets excited because you hear a dog with kennel cough, and it sounds like it's going to cough up a lung.
Right.
Some of the dogs, it sounds awful.
Yes.
But that's just the nature of how a dog coughs.
Exactly. And yes, you could get the shot. And with that whole epidemic that went out, and it was really coming out of, and what I've heard is it all came out, the big kennel cough issue came out because of different show dogs. They were catching it, and it almost widespread that way. It's gonna happen. You put a bunch of kids together, and they're gonna give each other a cold. This is life. But oh boy, did they ever make a big thing about that one?
Oh, well, and then the media lashes on, and God forbid some dog gets pneumonia and gets really sick. I mean, nobody wants that to happen.
No.
But the thing with the kennel cough vaccine that people need to remember is, at best, that vaccine protects against 2 organisms. And on most of the testing panels, they call it the kennel cough panel, there are 10 different things on there. We have no protection for the other 8. So, great, your dog is protected against bordetella and parainfluenza, not mycoplasma, not all the other things. So, you can still get quote unquote kennel cough.
Right.
It's still a cold. You can't protect completely.
And
so my focus is always, let's make the dog as healthy as possible.
Right.
Let's be sure, food is optimal, chemicals are minimized, we're using whatever supplements are appropriate for any conditions. We're not over vaccinating the dog. And then you can fight it off.
Right.
Just like if we keep ourselves healthier, we get a cold, but we kick it shortly.
Right.
But, if your lifestyle isn't good and you're not a healthy person, you might be down for a week.
Well, it's funny. I had this conversation just the other day, and we talked about it a little bit before we even started, about how in the 90s it was, well, we're not getting out and exercising. We're not eating healthy. I mean, fast food in the 90s was just massive. And, I think of all the times fast food might have been at the peak, might have been the 80s to 90s. I mean, it was huge. And you had... I
remember the first McDonald's coming to my hometown, and all the high school kids were there.
Oh, yeah.
We were so psyched.
Did you ever see that movie? Did you ever see that movie, The Founder? With Michael Keaton?
No, it's on my watch list.
Oh, gosh, it's a wonderful movie. Oh, my gosh. I love The Founder. I like Michael Keaton, but, it brought so much. And being that McDonald's really was a Missouri start thing, even though he was Illinois, he was coming back and forth, Illinois, Missouri. I thought that was really strange.
The driving,
Yeah, but I was having this conversation about just nutrition and how we're not feeding our dogs properly, and cats, but predominantly the conversation was dogs not eating right and not exercising. And I said, oh my gosh, I've heard this before. This is what we were talking about in the 90s.
Exactly.
And yet, what's going on? It's 2018, on the verge of 2018, and we're having the same conversation? But, no, it's a new conversation because we're only talking about dogs now. So it's a whole new conversation. What?
It's the same old thing. And I heard McDonald's is bringing back the $1 menu and the $2 menu now.
Oh, well, hey, the McRib came back.
I worked at McDonald's when they first came out with the McRib. That was one of my summer jobs of high school.
Oh, wow.
And, am I dating myself or what?
You know what? I honestly don't know when the McRib came out, but I'm going to say this, and I'm not lying to you. I'm being honest. I thought the McRib was kind of new.
No. It first came out, let's see, I think I had graduated high school. So, summer of 81.
Really? The McRib has been around?
Yeah, and they took it off the menu after a while. But that's when it was introduced.
So the McRib is as old as I am. Oh.
Yes. And people were nuts over it. And really, it was a totally manufactured thing. It was shaped form food into this little mold that kind of looked like it had grill marks on it or ribs. But it was processed meat. It was probably pink slime.
I think it's still like that. I mean, I haven't had one in
Yeah.
forever, but I know it's not really anything except for some processed garbage.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
But how is that different from, open up a can of grocery store dog food or cat food, think Alpo, those little chunks
Uh-huh.
that they have, that's formed meat, or there's some other technical term for it. But it's not real food, and real food is what our dogs should be eating. They can't be healthy on that stuff.
No, it can't.
Or our cats, for that matter.
Which is funny though, because we're looking at it going, oh, but it's got to be good. How is it good?
Yeah, and looking at that formed food, it looks like it is something. It looks like a meatball,
Yes.
or a carrot cube or whatever. But it's not. It's total fake. And you were talking about the chemicals and things we put in there that we're putting into our dog's body. And if someone's feeding those sorts of foods, they are. And you know who else is going to put those chemicals into a dog's body? If they're successful, is the shelter in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh,
With
yeah.
the vegan food.
Which is, you know what? You're getting to become a pro at this. Good transition.
You like that?
I did like that.
But it's true, because those foods, where do pet food companies, and Susan Fixton is certainly the authority on this, where do these pet food companies get their raw ingredients? It is not that those vegetables that you see at the farmer's market.
Nope.
Or you pull the carrots out of your home garden. No. It's the moldy, the spoiled, the not fit for human consumption, the old, whatever, the disfigured.
The contaminated.
Contaminated, yes. And what do they have to do? They have to treat them with chemicals to put it into the food and make it, safe for the dogs to eat. But I talked to Kimberly Godier about this. Dogs are not meant to be vegan.
Nope.
Or vegetarian.
Nope. No.
And this proposal, you had reached out to the people behind it, right?
Of course. They've yet to respond.
Did you get a response?
Nope. I know, right? I realized right away, you're probably never going to. And I reached out to everyone, and not one has sent me back something. Now, it is December, and it is kind of a crazy time, so that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Well, and I guess they're voting on this next week.
Yeah.
On the proposal to feed all the resident dogs. And they have 3 food companies bidding on a contract. Which, great, I worked in a shelter, a high volume shelter, for about 5 years total. We took in about 13,000 animals a year, dogs and cats, both strays and owner surrenders.
Yep.
I personally have spayed or neutered over 25,000 pets.
Yikes.
I have the carpal tunnel to prove it.
I bet.
Oh yeah, it was hard, and that was part of the reason I said I can't do this anymore. But all those spays and neuters did not change our intake number, unfortunately. But I got to know the costs of running this shelter, and thank God we had as many kind people donating food as possible.
Yeah.
Because just the food bill was huge. And we got food from a major company who basically donated the food and had us pay for the shipping. So 25 cents a pound for dry dog and cat food.
Yep.
And, there were times where we tried not to spend that money unless we had to and survive on the donation. So I don't know how LA is going to pay 87 cents a pound for vegan dog food. I would imagine they get better donations than we got, being in a more populated area, but they have more animals. And supposedly they do not feed their donated food in the shelter, which I find mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Because just, thinking of the massive costs, it's unbelievable. And of course, the vegan food or vegetarian food, I think the numbers I looked at, you would be feeding about 1 1/3 to 1 1/2 as many cups compared to a food that contained meat. So in other words, the vegetarian food is more dilute in terms of its nutrient content.
But here's the thing.
So,
Here's the big thing, though. Are the dogs, are they actually going to be getting a sufficient diet? And the answer is nope. Which
no.
shocks me.
And one of my friends raised the point, are these dogs going to eat this? Because, you think about, my personal dogs would probably eat it, but my dogs eat anything. And they do eat fresh vegetables. They love them. But that's not their main nutrition.
Right.
But in a stressed shelter environment with dogs that may have been surrendered, may have been on the street for a while, they may be sick, are they going to look at vegetarian food in a bowl and say, I'll eat this? I don't know. I think not.
You know, my Akita does not do well. She would look at that and go, nope, pass.
Yeah. And at my shelter, even, feeding, we would get anything donated from pedigree on up in quality. And a lot of dogs wouldn't eat the dry until we mixed a bunch of canned with it.
Yes.
And that would be what they'd eat. To my knowledge, LA is not looking at a canned vegetarian diet, only dry. So fact check me on that.
I don't have the facts in front of me. I mean, again, it was one of those, I want to talk to them. And I'll shoot another set of emails out, of course.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. We have an animal that requires protein in a large amount, and that's designed to get 40 to 60% of their calories from fat.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a vegetarian diet.
No.
It's simply not. And, I get the vegetarian and vegan agenda. I certainly get that as Americans eat too much meat and we put a strain on the planet, and that's not even considering the issue of factory farming and how some of these livestock and poultry are treated.
Yes.
But the dogs can't suffer for that.
No. And
they have no choice.
That's my problem, is the factory farming. We even talked about this the last time. That's where my problem has always been. And, we were even talking before we even started recording, we were talking about Walmart and how their stuff is. And, it's not pure. That's the sad part, but it's human grade. So at least you're going to bypass the AFCO, PFI, FDA BS, and that you're not going to get some crude crap. You're not going to get this bakery waste. That's a weird one to me. I just learned that one. That one's a weird one.
Yeah. That's actually common in livestock feeds, dried bakery products. But if you're feeding a cow or pigs, they can digest that.
I can see a pig.
But it doesn't belong in food for a carnivore.
Exactly. I can see with an animal that actually would be able to take that. There are a few that they're made for it. That's okay. Dogs are not. Cats are not. And there's the question. I want to know, what are they going to do with cats? Because that the LA County have them.
Right. And I mean, now it's like, are we discriminating against the dogs by feeding them a substandard, biologically inappropriate diet, but we're not discriminating against the cats?
Yeah.
We're feeding them what they need.
Yep.
That's kind of a crazy question.
I'm good at those.
I don't know. Is this just their starting point and, they're going to expand? Maybe they're testing the water. I don't know. But there's just no way that this holds any benefit for the dogs. And, most people who think of dogs in the shelter, they want the dogs to have a better life. They want the dogs to be comfortable and fed and loved.
Right.
And feeding them a substandard diet that does not meet their biological needs is not in the dog's best interest. I can't imagine anybody but someone maybe holding some extreme views not getting that.
The only way, and I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here, the only way this could work, and again, only way, is if you massively put supplements in there to kind of counterbalance and to, in a sense, not artificially because it'll be holistic, but in a sense, give all the nutrients that a carnivore would need. then maybe you can make it work. But then you're talking about more cost. And
Now
again,
you're talking about ingredients from China.
yes,
And things that open you up more to toxicities,
yes,
deficiencies, contaminations, as well as cost.
yes,
I mean, if I were going to do this, I would say feed what you're feeding, and pull out, a third of it and replace it with some fresh food, fresh veggies,
yeah,
fresh meat. Up the quality there, and stop using so much meat-containing dog food. If the dogs will eat it, again, you're not in a home environment. It's tough. My other question is, what kind of impacts are you going to have? Because many of these dogs will stay at the shelter a week or less. In New York State, if you pick up a stray dog, it has to stay in the shelter for 5 days so that an owner can reclaim it.
right,
And then you can put it up for adoption or whatever is deemed suitable. And if it's an owner's surrender, you can put it up for adoption immediately as long as the shelter feels it's suitable.
right.
So at our shelter, we had dogs that were staying a matter of hours. We had dogs that stayed a week or two. What kind of impact do you have if you fed them the vegetarian diet for, let's say, 3 to 5 days? And then they go to a home and the person goes and buys whatever food they're going to feed, maybe not necessarily a vegetarian food.
Personally, now I'm going to say it as a pet parent, not as a veterinarian, but I would think that
Sure.
you would be tearing up the dog, the internal, because here you're given this non-protein kind of plant-based meal
Right.
for 3 days, 4 days, even let's just say it's 3 weeks,
2 weeks, whatever.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's still not going to make its full rotation through the body. I mean, it's still going to need another 8 weeks anyway before it really kicks in. But let's just say that they go for 2 weeks. And then they go on a Purina base or some kind of dry kibble, whatever it is. That's a shock to the system. Why don't you just dive into ice water?
Well, or ask a vegetarian who ate meat either intentionally or unintentionally.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wreaks digestive havoc with them.
Yes.
Because your whole gut flora and everything has changed.
Yep.
The other thing with the vegetarian diets, and this is a concern. I imagine the LA County shelter takes in, or LA City, I'm not 100% sure which, takes in more than 13,000 animals a year.
Yeah.
More than the shelter I was at. All of a sudden, you're feeding them 1 1/3 to 1 1/2 the volume of food you were feeding before, and you're feeding something that's plant-based. What does that do to their poop production?
Yeah.
So now we're gonna up poop production by, let's say, 25 to 50%. That's a huge issue when you're talking about thousands of animals.
That really is. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. What goes in must come out.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And
that's the thing. We're always talking about nutrition and how the actual poop, changes. And yet, I didn't think
you
that.
and I, we've both changed people to natural diet, to in some way or another. And what did every owner say? Oh my gosh, his poops are so much smaller and they don't smell.
Right. And
he's pooping half of what he used to.
No.
The converse is going to be true.
Here's the problem. They go, there's something wrong. My dog's not pooping as much. That's good. You had to have that question. There's something wrong with my dog. It's not pooping as much as it should.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's only getting rid of what it doesn't need.
Amount.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That's a conversation that's hard to have.
It is. Well, we talk about poop all the time.
Right?
The other thing we do, us raw feeders, you betcha.
It's a common thing.
People bring me videos of poop, cell phone pictures, samples from multiple days. I get it all. Now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, that's my fault.
That's okay. It's okay. It'll come to me. Gosh, poop.
Yeah, poop will derail me. That's my one weakness here.
Yeah. So the other thing in looking at the 3 commercially proposed vegetarian diets, the starch content, it's way up there. These are like rice-based diets. So we know starches break down to carbohydrates,
Mm-hmm.
break down to sugar, do all sorts of bad stuff in the body.
Right.
And some of these foods are over 50% carbs.
Yep.
Not good for dogs with cancer, not good for dogs with inflammation in their body, not good for dogs that need to lose weight,
So,
and not
God.
good.
So, here's the big question. Now, again, we can put both dry kibble in this part of questions
Sure.
and go to the vegan side here. People are adopting potentially sick dogs.
From a shelter, yes.
And that's
Definitely.
the sad part because
you don't know. Yeah.
we keep saying, adopt, don't shop. And I mean, I even have it all over my stuff. It's always adopt, go to a shelter. And yes,
Right.
now I'm doom and glooming, so I got to actually, throw this in there. You can still reverse this. There's no saying that it's not reversible, but
Right.
boy, the devastation that's going on. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder what's worse, vegan or dry kibble in the shelter.
Well,
That's
yeah,
a hard one.
Any kibble is going to be a minimum of 40% starch, whether that starch comes from grains or white potatoes, sweet potatoes, lentils, chickpeas, etc.
Right.
And it's not good. However, we have to live in the real world, and you're feeding thousands of animals at a time. Kibble is the most convenient way to do it, and it is what it is. Like I said, if there were a way that you could get a bunch of volunteers in there to do some veggie prep and add some real food to that kibble, you could make it a lot better. And you and I have talked about the Purdue study where they added green and orange veggies 3 times a week and saw a remarkable reduction in cancer rates.
Right.
It's a simple thing. I don't know in a shelter system if it's a viable thing, depending on the size and logistics.
It does. And now it's making me scratch my head going, boy, for once, am I actually advocating for dry kibble?
Doesn't it kill you?
Oh my gosh, that's just a
does.
mind brain. My brain's just going. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, I'm actually okay with kibble for once? Because
I think you almost have to be, but I always, and this is one of the reasons I respect the hell out of Karen Decker, she always says, find a little something that you can do better.
Yeah.
Just a little thing can make it better. And, for me, adding, a half a cup of chopped veggies in there, or maybe a little bone broth or something over the top, some little thing that would be doable in that environment could make a big difference. And even if it just makes the dog enjoy the food more, there's benefits to that, because some of these dogs, as you pointed out, have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And one thing, at least our shelter was never short on, was volunteers. What we were short on was someone organizing them to do things that really, really mattered. But hey, I get in there. We're working in the soup kitchen here, and we're prepping dog food additives. It could be done if somebody made it their mission.
It should be. I'm really hopeful that somebody does come out and say, okay, we'll talk to you, because that would be at least maybe put a little bit of reason into this. It's so strange. I mean, and
it came out of seemingly nowhere.
Yeah. Well, boy.
There were people alleging some of the political implications and stuff, and is there somebody swooping in there to make some money? I don't know. I'm not concerning myself with that. I'm just focusing on the dogs.
Well, it's funny.
My other concern is if the dogs have been fed this and they go home and get switched to another food and then have massive diarrhea all over the house, what are the chances that dog is going to be returned to the shelter as non-house trained, when actually it's just massive GI upset from a food transition?
I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, twisted gut is pretty much.
Yeah.
It's right there, and it's so obvious. Yet, how would you know if you're not educated in it, Or if you're not, what if you're a first-time pet parent? This is your first dog,
Right.
and all of a sudden the dog's just dropping it everywhere, and it's watery, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this dog's sick. I can't have this. I don't know what to
Right.
do.
I had somebody return an 8-week-old puppy because it was biting their hand. Their first-time dog owner. It's like, it's a little Labrador mixed puppy. It's gonna grab everything. It's normal.
Yes.
Stuff a toy in its mouth.
Right.
But they were adamant. They were not taking this on. This puppy is aggressive. So, and the shelter's number one job is get homes for dogs.
Right. And I
So
mean,
anything that interferes with that is a cause for concern.
and we all know that they're high rate kill shelters, especially in big metropolitan cities. So that's a big problem.
Yeah, they have no options.
Right.
I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
It's
And I know they do work with rescue groups and such and fosters, but still, the numbers are staggering.
as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I knew we were going to talk about this, but now I'm thinking I'm going to have to reach out to a certain lady here. Her name is Carrie Whitman, and she was on about a year ago. She was the one that was behind the spay-neuter law of Los Angeles in 2008.
Right.
And
I'd love to hear statistics.
yeah,
Did it make a difference?
No, it never made any difference. It's still
Because it didn't in my world.
Yeah, no, there was no change, and they're not enforcing it. They don't have enough animal control agents to actually enforce it. Police can't do it because for every one police officer, I think, and this is back, I've been out of Los Angeles for almost 8 years. It used to be one police officer for every 30 residents. I have a feeling that number has gone up, obviously, probably. So you think about it, how are they going to respond to, this dog is having puppies because it's not, neutered or not spayed. So I'm kind of now scratching my head on this going, wait a second, time out, hold on. If we can't make a spay-neuter law stick, why are we letting this actually work? This has harmful consequences where that, I mean, what's the benefit, especially on a male dog getting neutered? There's properties that are just astronomical of why we need to do it health-wise, and same for a female dog getting spayed. And yet that's not being enforced, but we're going to enforce changing dry kibble. Oh God, I'm advocating for it, but dry kibble for vegan. I mean, this is outrageous.
Well, yes, it really is. And I think the good part about it is it's raising conversations such as this one.
Right.
Of what are we really accomplishing? What are the impacts? And I'm just concerned about the dogs.
Well, it's funny.
Because I see a lot of repercussions to the switch onto the vegetarian.
Oh yeah.
In terms of them not eating, and in terms of going to a home and being transitioned to something else, and getting sent back to the shelter.
I'm going to be really curious because Susan's coming on, and I'm really going to be curious to actually hear her take on it. I mean, it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Definitely. And Kimberly is talking with one of the commissioners of the shelter this weekend.
Yeah, she did she did land that interview.
She got through.
Yeah.
She landed that interview, and I can't wait to hear what she comes up with.
Oh, I hope she does. I hope that she presses them.
Hopefully they don't back out.
Yeah, well.
And I mean, she doesn't need to crush them. She just needs to say, let's step back, look at this with an open mind, and think about the dogs.
What's great about Kimberly is she doesn't put somebody in a bad situation and put their feet to the fire. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy actually
incredibly respectful.
Very much so. And we operate very similar. It's kind of like I know that she's not going to destroy them. She's not going to look for a soundbite.
No.
But
no, that's not her.
No, it's never been.
She's not going to let them weasel out on something without some science behind it.
Right. That's one of the things I absolutely love about her is that she can get the information out there. People can argue with her about the facts that they may believe, but they can never win. She's so educated and so to the point. Yeah, and she's listening most likely, and she's probably going, "Okay, stop talking about me."
She probably is.
And moving to the whole idea of Susan. Susan Thixton.
Yeah.
I know that. Before I even transition, do we have more that we want to actually pile on to the LA shelters? Because the facts are there. It's not. It's definitely not the reasonable.
It's not in the. No, it's
Not in
not.
their best interest.
And I don't think. I think while the goals of, protecting our climate, treating animals more ethically, all those things are certainly, I agree with them.
Right.
I think there are stats on, they were saying something like 50,000 turkeys are dying for your dog's food. And that's simply not true, because the dog food industry is a byproduct industry.
Yes.
Those 60,000 turkeys died for human consumption, and whatever was left over went into dog food. That's not the same thing.
Right.
So I think there's a little misrepresentation occurring, or misinformation.
Yeah.
But we'll see where it shakes out.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. I look forward to at least learning what they do. I'm hoping that the cost outweighs the goal, and they're going to be like, yeah, this is just not going to be cost efficient. That
If they're using donated food to feed their in-house animals, the cost will be prohibitive.
Right.
Because 87 cents a pound for what they're using now, which is Canaday. And then they're going to have to feed up to 1.5 times as much. So that 87 cents a pound could now potentially be, get my little calculator here, say the worst case scenario, goes up to $1.30 a pound.
Okay. I was thinking $1.25, so my math was a little off, but okay.
Yeah. And if you're getting food for free, why wouldn't you be feeding that? Donated from, there are kids that have birthday parties and they say, don't give me gifts, get food for the animals in the shelter.
Right.
Or the food drives from various groups and such.
Well, I've said it before.
It doesn't make financial sense to me.
One of the hardest things that I do every month is I give out free dry kibble. But I do it.
Right.
It's a hard one to give it away, but I know it's to low income and it's people who need it. And I would rather see the actual dog and cat be fed than go hungry. So,
or get surrendered to a shelter.
Or exactly, or be dumped. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we go out on rescues for dumped dogs, dumped cats, kittens, etc. And it's a simple, I can't afford to have this. I'm just going to put it out here on this open road and I'm going to drive away and somebody will come and rescue it, which typically tends to be us. And we're always short cat food. And again, the hardest thing in this world is to give out dry kibble. And for me, I'll sit there reading the bags, and we have our volunteers, and I'll be, educating them on what all the products are. And my wife just kind of puts her hands up, going, "Oh God, he's on it again." The soapbox moment.
Yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those. We get all
once you know the difference, you can't go back.
You can't go back. But the hard part is that I know it's a double-edged sword. If I give them this food, I know what's in it. But if I don't give them, how does it weigh? Plus, if they could afford it, would they go kibble or would they go raw? And I honestly don't think that they would go raw. I think they would still be kibble. I mean,
because there's bigger, you got to look at the big picture. Do they have the time? What else is on their plate? Do they have the interest? A lot of them are just going to say, look, I'm working 2 jobs and I've got 2 kids. I'm going to pour the food in the bowl.
Yeah.
I get it. And back to, Becker's theory, just get them to throw something else in the bowl.
Yep. Put a raw egg.
Certainly. Yeah, crack an egg in it.
Yep. Leave the shell.
Our dogs. Yeah, exactly. All the leftovers got scraped into the dog's bowl. And I mean, it didn't matter what it was, whether it was gravy, whether it was, I cringe now. But you know what? Those dogs were healthy. They didn't go to the vet for anything but routine stuff, and they lived well into their teens.
Didn't we?
And, sometimes
we went on a tyrant over this, didn't we? over how we would
might
throw
have.
food. I remember it was either the first one or the second one. We were just going,
I think it was the first one.
it was the first one. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
kids would throw food in there. And honestly, yes, it would be mashed potatoes, but most of the time it would be the actual protein or the vegetables that would end up down underneath the table.
Or the mixture. Yeah.
I mean, no wonder dogs did not have, what is it now? 90% cancer is now the number. It's 90% of kibble.
One in two dogs, 1 in 1.6 Goldens.
So bad. And
crazy.
hip dysplasia for your bigger dogs.
Right.
I mean, oh God. I mean, I could just keep going. And this is where my conversations are all the time. And this is another reason why my wife is just so sick of me.
She just throws up her hands.
She does.
But you could teach someone to do a do-it-yourself raw diet from the supermarket or using some wholesaling type groups. Much cheaper than a kibble. But do they have the time? Do they have a freezer? Do they have the interest?
I don't.
Not always.
I don't have the freezer. When we do our grocery shopping, we actually do our dog shopping as well. So we kind of say, okay, $70 roughly is for our dog for raw. All right, cool. We got that set. And that's her food bill. Now a lot of people would be like, that's a week? Yeah, that's a week. I always tell people, look, there's two ways of doing it. You can learn the information and do it yourself, or you could outsource it. I always say there's some great outsourcing people out there. Currently I always say Fetching Foods is the one I go through, which I like to push them the most, because I like what he's doing. Or you can go to the big companies that are doing it. And, for that safety net that you feel like, oh, it's a big company, which is not always, and this, it's not always a guarantee.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say, you go with your smaller ones that are giving that 100%. Their hands are on it from beginning at farmer's market to prep. And, you got meat grinders and it grinds up the bone and you get all that done. It's all put into a nice little place and then you just dump and go. Almost like kibble.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's convenient food.
And you're going to pay a little bit.
You do pay for that service.
Not much. I mean, if you really analyze it, it's not that much more.
No.
I mean, you don't have to worry about the education of how to do it or the work. There it is.
Right. Yeah. Or you can be like me and I have a grinder.
Yep.
And I grind and it's like, okay, I'll shoot an afternoon making a bunch of dog food. And it's a lot of work. I have to package it myself and put it in my freezer and all. But I know exactly what's in there, in what proportions, and I kind of like doing it that way. That being said, I was gifted this week with 10 pounds of turkey hearts.
Oh, nice.
15 pounds of a new company's ground up mixture. And supposedly I'm getting 5 pounds of tripe tomorrow. So it's been a good week. All gifted. Like, oh, dogs, you are living large this week.
Wow, nice. But now, you know what? Here's the starter kit for every home raw feeder. A scale, a meat grinder.
Yeah.
There's your starter kit right there. Simple.
Yeah.
And it's a real simple process. I mean, you can get the actual mechanical one, or you can do the hand crank. A little bit more work, but at least you get an exercise. So
exactly.
And then, are you really worried? Here, let's go back to the beginning here when we're talking about nutrition and what we're worried. 3 W's in a row. Tried that one. That's hard. What we're worried about is what we put in our body. And then we're all so concerned, but we're not concerned about what's in the dog. I mean, again, go back to the 90s. MSG. You had all these different things. Oh, we can't have this in our food. We can't have that in our food. All these chemicals. Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. DHA, DHT.
Yes. And then look at now. It's all there. It's all right there in front of us in a nice little pretty bag that says, here's all the crap chemicals that your dog will die from, or your cat. or will have a miserable existence. But it's cheap.
But it's cheap and it's convenient and you don't have to think about it. All
Right.
the things that we sometimes love. But you just hit something on the head there, which is, live a miserable existence. To me, I would almost say miserable existence to survival. I don't want my dog surviving. I want my dog thriving.
Right.
I want the experience of looking at that dog and saying, my God, look at that beautiful structure, beautiful coat, happy attitude. People, you take your dog out of the car somewhere and people are like, oh my gosh, what kind of dog is that? He's beautiful. Look at his shiny coat. And, all the things that good health, natural diet put in the dogs that, you can get away with it for a couple years with dog food. But by the time those dogs are, say, 3 to 5, they're aging already.
Yep.
Whereas our dogs are still in their, they're totally in their prime, not even really there. And at age 10, oh my gosh, your dog doesn't look 10. I have a golden retriever at the practice that, I love this dog. He's wonderful. He's 6 years old. He's been gray around the muzzle for the last couple of years. He looks about 12 or 13. He looks like he's ready to die. He's 6 years old.
Wow.
But he's a dog food dog, and Dad is not ready to make the switch. And, of course, he's a golden, so genetics are a factor. He is hypothyroid, so that's, fighting his weight has been a huge problem as we got his thyroid regulated. But this man's not going to have this dog for too much longer, and it's tragic.
That's rough.
And it
That's
is.
rough.
It totally is. And then I look at my dog who just turned 7, and, he looks like he's 2. Totally different animal. Almost different species.
I'm a 9-year-old Akita.
And, yeah, exactly.
There's that, and it bounces around.
Yeah, and Akitas are not necessarily a long-lived dog.
Nope.
And cats. I think of the average house cat that, has that big fat pad between their belly. And, at age 5, they're just laying on the couch. And by 12, they're acting old. Now, part of that is lack of exercise, but most of it is inappropriate diet.
Do you ever go down the cereal aisle and you see the little toys in different kid cereals? And
Yeah.
I kind of laugh a little bit because I look at the cat food bags and I go, you know what? There should be little bottles of amoxicillin in every single bag of dry kibble for cats because the UTI is guaranteed with every bag.
Well, they're chronically dehydrated.
There it is.
And much more prone to diabetes by the start. Plain and simple. Even the Academy of Veterinary Internal Medicine acknowledges that, a very traditional veterinary body. Like, dry food leads to diabetes. End of story.
It all goes back.
I was one of the kids who had to fish the toy out of the cereal as soon as I got home from shopping. I definitely was that kid.
Well, I'm still that kid, even though I'm an adult. I still really do like the toy. Sadly enough, I have to give it up to my daughter every time. But it's like those Kinder eggs. Oh boy, I love those things. And now I have to cough up the toy to her now, and I'm like, darn, I love these. But at least I get to. But I don't know. I still don't know what there is about the dry kibble. I just always make that joke in my head. It runs through it all the time. Well, let's move on to season 6.
One more thing. That's an interesting comparison, and I'm going to have to do that the next time I'm at the supermarket. Is put a bag of cat food next to a cereal box and see if they use the same marketing techniques.
Oh, they do. I bet
they do.
Oh, it's so much. It's almost identical. And again, I know it's funny because I reference youth because it really does come into play, and that is, I think that the cereal companies, and I could be wrong, but I think that they were actually told that they were not allowed to put toys in the cereal because they were terrible quality of cereal, kind of like dog food and cat food now. And kids were drawn to buy the cereal because of the toy.
Oh, absolutely. That was how you cooked it.
And that's exactly what it is now, is I really just look at it the same identical way. There's this bag of cat food that had the same, or dog food, that has the same kind of look and the charm and the prettiness to it, and we're drawn like we were to those cereal boxes to go, hey, I want me a box of whatever's. You know, they're
I want
mad.
the one with the sparkle.
Oh yeah, we remember that. That conversation was great. You know what? I haven't heard much about that except the
It seems
spark.
to have died down.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I like how she pulled up in a Lamborghini recently. That's the last I saw. Oh gosh, yeah, that was bad.
That was bad.
So Susan Thixton, removal from AFCO.
Yeah.
I could stay on all of these other topics forever, and I said that I was going to have you drive the ship. Why am I driving here?
Because this is the way we roll.
It is. So Susan Thixton, removal from AFCO.
Yep. In some ways, I kind of feel, looking back on it, that it was inevitable that they had this idea that they would, we've let a consumer advocate in, but I don't think it was ever their intention to really work with her and work with consumers. And I think they've been tired of her for a long time, and they found an excuse and said, okay, you're done. But I know Susan to be so ethical.
Yes.
And I know she's told me in private conversations, I can't tell you what went on at the meeting.
Yes.
Yep. And it's like, okay, I don't want you to violate. And she never would. And I mean, we're talking on the phone. Nobody would know. But I always found her to be totally ethical. And if there was something that she was not supposed to disclose, she wouldn't disclose it.
Right.
But she's also not going to not speak the truth and not stand up for consumers.
That's the funny part behind all of it. I know exactly what you're saying because she would tell me, she said the same thing to me. I can't tell you what went on in the meetings. Okay, right. That's totally fine. I don't, you know what, if it shouldn't be disclosed, I'm totally cool. I don't need to know. I knew that she would do what's right by us.
Right, right.
And she never, it was, I read the whole reasoning that she had posted.
The whole story, yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at it and I went, you were, and I'll play the sexism card on this one. You were trying to silence her because she was a woman. You said, you gave her this little pat on the head, go back to where you belong, and let the adults talk. And that's how I read it. And I was just floored by it.
After the party, yeah. Well, you're dealing with the good old boys.
Yeah.
And different parts of the country tend to have different, levels of progress where it comes to equality and such.
Right.
Maybe that's not the right term, but I think you get my drift.
Yeah.
And, some of these Midwestern guys, or wherever, the Texas guy.
No, he's Missouri.
He's not going to let he was Missouri.
Yes.
He's not going to let some little lady tell him how to run his pet food company.
You know what makes it even worse is Kristen Green. She's in Kentucky. She had been on. She was the representative that spoke in behalf of AFCO on the podcast. She's also included in that. Now, I talked to, and I think his name is Matt Cook. I could be wrong on the first name. I know it's Cook.
That sounds familiar.
I've actually spoken to him directly. Him and I have been in conversation, and he said, well, I have no problem talking to you. I can't talk about, what happened. Okay, I can understand that. She goes, and it follows. Sure. I know you did an interview with us about AFCO, but I think you kind of covered everything you can cover. And that just led me to believe you already asked enough questions. We don't want any more poking around. Right. Oh, I told him.
Or we're not going to answer it, so don't bother poking around.
Right. Well, he follows up. He goes, if you have any questions you want to talk, I have no problem with it. And I sent him back, and this is before Thanksgiving. I said, yes, I would love to, because you're part of the Department of Agriculture, which really shows a little bit of, to me, and I'll speak for just me. You're the Department of Agriculture, and you're representing a very crooked organization. How can I even trust the Department of Ag? Because you're in it. You're
I mean, there's a
filthy.
total conflict of interest.
Exactly. And you're filthy. You've got your hands on it. And what did they pull last year? $300-something thousand AFCO brought in, I think.
Right.
I mean, what? Are you
That was
kidding?
for selling their food definitions. Is that correct?
Something like that.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
And
Well,
I didn't have I don't even have the full figures or the where it
yeah.
came from, but yeah, it was something to that effect. And I'm thinking to myself, you made that kind of money for doing what? I mean, really, lying to consumers?
Yeah.
Lowering the bar?
Well,
How much lower can you get that bar? It's already transparent to the
that's true.
ground.
Well, when we have ingredients like feather meal being accepted,
Yeah.
I mean, craziness.
It's ridiculous. And here you have Susan Dixon, who I do find to be very ethical, as you said. And I
Well,
decided,
and
go ahead.
I was thinking of the Avengers debacle with her.
Oh, yeah.
And people who were defending Avengers, and they accused her of, lying, misrepresenting, and everything she said was backed up with laboratory analysis.
Right.
She doesn't make a statement if she can't prove it.
Well, yeah, it's one of the things I absolutely admire about her. She has the claim, and then she follows it up with data. There is no arguing it. It's concrete. And yet people are still going, nope. And I'm like, I've read different
You
things, and I'm
want
like,
to stick your head in the sand? I mean,
right? Well, I don't even know if it's even that to that degree. They're putting their finger in their ear, going la 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 the whole way.
Right.
And I mean, I read everything about it, and I said, this is a load of crap. You wanted to bring her in. You wanted to give her a cute little title so that you could shut her up. And you thought you were going to do it.
And so you could say that we were nice.
Yeah.
But you never acted with integrity and, said, well, let's actually see what the consumer wants, make a good product. And, hey, she actually offered them, in a sense, a way to make more sales.
Right.
Improve the quality of your product, get an endorsement from an outside independent source. How many people would buy a food based on Susan's recommendation? Well, how many people buy her list every year?
Right.
She just released the 2018 approved food list.
Right.
And people donate to her cause and receive that in return and act on her recommendations. They threw down a win-win.
And they don't care.
Now they look foolish and they don't care.
Well,
they're the ones making all the money.
Right. And look, they're right next to the two people that are right there next to them is the FDA and PFI. And they don't care. And they're all just raking it in. And they just don't care. And unsuspected pet parents are right now at a store, big box store, small little general store, doesn't matter, but unsuspectedly buying these products, even down to bones for their dogs. That it could be a recall. Right. The recall that came out last week. People are buying this stuff, and I guarantee there are a couple of those bones still in existence that are going into a little stocking that will go to Fido for Christmas, because everybody is hell-bent to say, I got to do something good for my dog. Well, and, there it is.
That's where the real crime is.
Yes.
Because the owners, the public for shelter dogs, the veterinarians, I mean, we all just want the dogs to be happy because we love dogs.
That's it.
And cats. I'm speaking dogs, but, and we're getting deceived by the industry.
Yep.
Or industries, perhaps is more correct.
Yeah, plural.
But I mean, how many people bought those jerky treats and put them in the Christmas stocking? You saw the interview in Pet Tools, and that's exactly what they did for, I want to say it was the Rottweiler. And, maybe they purchased them before the recall came out and had no way of knowing.
Right.
Or the recall comes out after, and all of a sudden the dogs are sick. Or the Avengers.
Yep.
I'm sorry, it was not hunk of beef. It was pentobarb pentobarbital containing horse meat.
Uh-huh.
Total fraud. Total and complete fraud.
Well, I'll
And
tell
they
you,
knew it.
when you picked your panel, Jessica Slater, my gosh.
Oh, she's a bomb, isn't she?
Wow. I mean, I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed talking with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. She blew my mind. She really did.
Yeah.
I mean,
She's incredibly knowledgeable and passionate. And, you know, I could have been a lawyer if I could have been a lawyer like Jeff, you know, that really cares and puts it out to do some good.
I think you would have been a
And
good
that's what
lawyer.
she's about.
I think you would have been a good lawyer. I really do. But unfortunately, it wasn't your calling. Podcasting is your calling. No.
Hey, who knows? You know, everybody's
Well,
got to have a hobby.
Well, you know, you're here and you're going to be back and back and back. And like I said, 2018.
Oh, good, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2018 is the year.
This is the year where you're just going to stay on here and we're going to get this thing on the radio and this is just going to be our thing from here on out. But,
well, and I think 2018 for pets is going to be an important year.
I think so.
Because, I mean, if you look at the big picture, all these things that are happening, what's happening with Susan, pets are now becoming above the fold news, to use the old newspaper term.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's food or the LA shelters or the different veterinary issues, it's being talked about. And anything that raises awareness like that is going to let us make some progress.
Right. Well, I mean, starting this 4 years ago, nobody really gave two darns about it. And as time is going on, people are going, oh, okay. And I'm starting to notice people going, wait, I actually understand this. You know, and it became one of those 4 years. 4 years is a long time in an educational process. And people are now, whoa, wait a second here. This isn't right. And it's changing.
Things have to just bubble up to get to reach the mainstream. And sometimes that does take 4 years.
It does.
It
could take another 4.
How many times people ask me about feeding real food in an office call. It's like, they didn't come looking for me. They came as a traditional office call. But they're like, oh, you know, my friend feeds this crazy diet. And I'm like, raw? I'm like, yeah. And it just keeps coming up.
Yes.
So people are, it's getting there. It's getting there.
You know, it's funny. People love to take photos. I mean, nowadays we have our smartphones, so we take photos of everything. Sure. You know, I've never been one of those people that go, oh, I want to take a photo of my dinner. I don't care. And I don't think anybody cares about what I'm having for dinner. But I'm going to tell you, the most enjoyable thing to do is take a picture of my dog's food bowl. I get the biggest kick out of it. And of course, it's posted or I just, you know, sometimes I'll post, sometimes I won't. And there is not a week, and sometimes, you know, I would say not a day, but most of the time, there's not a week for sure that goes by that I'm not in depth conversation with somebody about raw feeding. And I'm like, oh, you need to take a look. Here's what my dog ate. And we scroll through it. And this is this night. This is this night. This is, and always the first thing, but that's raw food. Yes.
Yeah.
But why? Oh dear, let me tell you.
Well, and first point, it's food, it's not feed.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And it was funny because I was talking with our exotics vet today, and I think PetSmart paid her salary today because she must have seen 5 different exotic pets, all from PetSmart.
Oh God.
And one was a hamster that didn't have an ear. She thought it was a congenital defect because there was like nothing there. Something else, you know, a sick guinea pig, a bird that wasn't acting right. And she had a small snake that was emaciated. And, you know, I don't know diddly squat about snakes, nor do I really, I never aspire to treat snakes. But, you know, it's a curiosity thing. So I said, you know, what kind of things can do this in a baby snake? So she's naming off some viruses and stuff. And I said, well, what about nutritional deficiencies? Do you worry about that like you do, like iguanas will get calcium deficiency? And it's very classic. They kind of get like something called rubber leg, and you can imagine what that looks like.
Wow.
And she said, well, no, we don't have to worry about that or worry about the calcium because they're eating the whole little baby mouse. We
Right.
call them pinkies. And they're eating the bone and everything. And it just shot through my brain. So why don't you feed dogs like that? Because she's a kibble feeder. But it's like she got that snake was getting its calcium from raw bones or from the whole prey.
Right.
And this is prey model feeding 101. She totally got that concept and was on board with it. But something was preventing her from making that leap of logic of what about cats and dogs that we nutritionally abuse with kibble.
Wow. And as I
Isn't that
think
amazing?
it is, because now I'm not a snake person and my wife
Right.
loves snakes. She had one when we first met. It got loose. I was staying
geez.
over. I actually was sleeping on the floor. Funny story. I was sleeping on the floor.
Oh no.
And and she swore up and down that this snake was gone. And she thought it got out.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
a couple weeks went by and I continued to sleep on the floor. We were very new together, just moved in kind of thing. Didn't it was weird. I guess you could call it. So I'm sleeping one day one night and I kept hearing stuff in the closet and I told her, I hear weird things in the closet, and she's like, no, nothing's wrong. Well, it turns out the snake had been in there for 2 weeks without any food. And it was
the snake was restless.
yes. And it was I think it was a boa constrictor. I think I don't know. We're talking 14 years that's past since,
Sure.
but we went to the actual pet store and got feed mice, which I thought was terrible name. This poor little thing's alive, and you're calling it feed mice.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine that?
Yep.
So
Yep.
we came home with 2, and you couldn't give both of them. You only could do one, and then it would eat one, and the next day you give the other one, or it would gorge.
Sure. Right.
I'm telling you this, like, I'm telling this story like I tell everybody, and I'm telling you how I just thought about the reality. So that night, the other feed mouse is in the bedroom, in the box, which was a stupid idea to leave it in the room. And all night you heard this poor mouse scratching at this box.
Oh no, poor mouse.
Poor mouse all night kept me awake, and I kept feeling so sorry for that mouse until I was sleep deprived the next morning. And I watched the snake eat the actual mouse the next morning.
Oh wow.
And, you think to yourself, every ounce, the nails, the eyes, the organs,
Everything.
the bone. Can you just think about it? It is raw prey, like you said, 101.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
It's Circle of Life meets Natural Geographic, and
I've never been the same since I saw it, but I saw it from that exact point of view, where I'm like, it just took everything. Didn't leave anything behind.
Girl.
But
and digested
yes,
everything, because that is its diet.
Yes. And when it comes out, what does it come out? Very little. I mean, it's like when you go back to the dogs eating raw, very small, because it takes everything.
Very efficient.
Yeah.
But there's the right amount of fiber from the fur and whatever is indigestible to kind of cleanse the GI tract and clear it right out. But
bizarre.
We've just become so indoctrinated to the idea of commercial kibble that we don't, even veterinarians, trained scientists, don't make that leap, even when they do it from one exam room to another.
And yet you look at reptile to actual dog, anatomy is anatomy. I mean, it's still going to play the same.
Sure.
I mean, let's just say reptile to dog to human. I mean, it's all the same, no matter how you look at it. It's the same. And I just kind of go, wait, it makes sense. And you had that moment today. So it's just like, wait.
Well, and the frustration of saying, okay, so you just did that and you fed that species its natural diet, but you went to see this cat and you told it said to feed it science diet dry.
Oh.
That's the hard part. And again, it's not it's not motive. The intentions of the vet are to do the right thing by the pet, but it's just not making that scientific leap or having that other bit of knowledge, knowing the other side of, I can feed it what it's really designed to eat.
And that's my pitch that I go with, what it's designed to eat. And
Right.
that's really comes down to what it's designed to eat. It's not designed to eat this chemical-based dry kibble. It's meant to eat real meat, have the vegetables to simulate the actual stomach. It's supposed to. And people just look at me and go, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a different path, but I'll stack the health of a properly raw-fed dog against the health of a kibble-fed dog any day. And I believe 99% of the time, the raw-fed dog is going to be healthier.
Oh, by far.
That's what we're all after. It's what we're all after.
I do want to believe that. I want to believe that that's what we're all after. I just have that kind of negative side going, I don't know if everybody is. Because you could tell them, hey.
Owner-wise. Yeah.
I mean, I've told.
Or they're just, we've all been brainwashed in our own way.
Yeah.
If brainwashing is the right term. And, some beliefs we cling to with both hands. And some of us are like, all right, well, I can consider that and get the information and then make my belief or change my belief or not. It's hard. Some people are wired just to believe what they're told, and that's it. And you get told kibble is the best for enough years, you're going to believe it.
But what's funny is that we have the same issue, except here's the difference. You're a doctor. Yeah. And so when you say it, you would think that they'd be like, you know what, you're right. I have the same issue where I'll tell people the exact same thing, go down the model, and they'll just go, no, this is still good. And I think to myself, wait a second, what do I have to do?
Yeah, the credentials definitely do help, but they don't help in the case of the person who doesn't believe it's within their reach to do something different. They think it's just too hard for them, or they don't have the resources they need, or, their spouse isn't supportive of it, or the one I heard today from a client who was talking socially at a social event with another veterinarian who was a raw feeder, but who switched back to kibble because of her children. But she now has 2 babies. And of course, my client is like, well, why did you do that? In the nicest of ways.
Was it out of fear? Was it fear of the child?
It was out of fear of bacteria.
Yeah.
But it's like, you were a raw feeder. You should know that really, as long as you're doing things in a common sense way, that the bacteria are not an issue. And if the issue is your child is eating out of your dog food bowl, well, that's a separate problem. And you need to do a little parental management. But totally switched.
A friend of mine told me that her brother-in-law, I think it's her brother-in-law, had said, I could never feed raw because that would require me to clean the bowl every day. She said,
oh my. Well,
how
like
often?
I said, some people are not willing.
Well, her response was, how often do you actually wash your dog's bowl? Maybe once a year.
Yeah. I usually rinse them out after.
Yeah.
But it's not a huge issue.
I would rinse it out afterwards, even if it was kibble. It's still going to have it.
Yeah. There's still going to be slime.
Right. That's
definitely.
Yeah. It's funny. We're running low on time, so we're going to have to miss out on eyewear for dogs, which is kind of funny because
okay.
But we'll get back to that another time because that was an interesting.
Yeah, we will.
Because man, I wrote down some notes about that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you're the perfect one. But as always, we always end up kind of having our own conversation, and it's what makes it so unique, and that's why you are the perfect fit to be always with us. So I always really appreciate it. No, thank you. Seriously.
Anytime.
Well, it's funny, as I always say, we continue this conversation periodically through the weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of bounce different things. So it's not uncommon. This is normal to me, at least. But to everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
they're going, well, I'm not able to be part of this. So it's kind of nice. It's like, well, you'll just come back on, and this will just be a
Yeah,
reoccurrence and
and
kick around this
yeah,
can.
kick around the ideas and show people that all this stuff is within their reach.
It
It's
really
really
is.
not hard.
It's,
You just have to take that little first step and show yourself that, oh, okay, this worked out fine. Now I can take the next step.
right. Yeah.
And it takes you as long as it takes you to get to where you're going.
I don't really think,
I've had people go from kibble to raw in 2 weeks. I've had people take 2 months. Like, it's all good.
see,
Every day you're doing a little better for your dog.
I've heard people say that they put kibble and raw together for a couple weeks, and they
Mm-hmm.
gradually. And again, I was a kibble feeder. I wasn't always
Mm-hmm.
like this. And
Right.
when it was time to switch, when that light bulb went off, it was like bye, and the kibble was gone the next
Yeah.
day, and it was raw. And my dog
Yep.
looked at it and went, "Excuse me, but
This is good."
well, no." She looked at it and went, "I'm not
Oh.
eating it." She went,
Oh, she's
yeah.
one of those.
Yeah, she was starved for 2 days. We're like, here's the food.
Yeah.
She would
Yep.
walk away from it. She would literally pick out the organs and be like, nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
Loved her turkey neck, though. Loved
Yeah.
that. I was a little surprised. I was like,
Yeah.
is she going to do it?
Like the crunch factor.
She hates that, though. That's the funny part. She hated the crunch.
Really?
Yeah.
But she liked the turkey necks.
She liked the turkey neck, and since the turkey neck, she's okay with bone. We were thinking that we would have to do bone powder because she would fight every meal. She'd fight. Yeah.
Interesting.
She still fights on the organ, so that's kind of hard because we do the 80-10-10. So it's the 80% carnivore for the meat or protein, which again, I always say how much I hate the word protein because it was a life, but it's the only way of being scientific. The 10% organ, 10% bone.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a few veggies thrown in for some variety and some
Right. And I kind of factor in the veggie kind of thing and the yogurt, and that all factors into the 10 organ. So it's.
Oh, okay. That's how you do it.
That's that's the math on that side. But because then I wouldn't be at 100%. But
right.
And for 75 pounds, she should be at. I think the actual math would be like 1.5 pounds. But she kind of is a small dog, so to actually add bulk, we actually doubled it to 3. You don't see it. Muscular, but absolutely no drab, no flab, no nothing. Solid personality, and so it's like, okay, yes, we're actually over the calculated model, and again, you have to sometimes.
Each dog is an individual.
There it is.
Feed them what they need.
And see, that's the message.
And most owners are an expert in their dog.
Right. And that's what raw feeding is.
24 hours a day. Yeah, exactly.
Well, anything you want to add?
No, I think we covered it all.
Oh no, we left a lot on the table.
We left a lot out, but we got to let these people go to where they have to do their thing.
Right.
And pick it up next time.
There it is. All right.
I think we're at a new record for us.
No, we're right. We're actually no, actually, you and I have been going for so much longer. So yes, for that reason, yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm Chris Green. Have a fantastic week. Do you want to? You need to have a sign off now because you're going to need a theme song too.
Sign off.
You do need a sign off. What's your sign off going to be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. This is Dr. Laurie Coger. Come visit me at healthydogworkshop.com.
There it is. Bye-bye, everybody.
There it is. Bye.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime.